One.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is Legally Engineered. So for my first entry in this Legally Engineered YouTube channel, I decided to have a collaboration with one of my closest friends. She's also a lawyer. There she goes. She is attorney April Uy, and together we're teaching law and obligations and contracts. And given the new normal that we have, we decided to have our video lectures uploaded in this YouTube channel to help out the students there who are now taking law and obligations and contracts. With the hope that we'll be able to assist you and help you in this trying time that we are all adjusting in this flexible kind of learning. So for this module, I hope you'll enjoy it and have fun. Let's watch this. Good day to all the students and to all the viewers. I am attorney Bendrick A. Maralit, and together with me,
I am attorney April M. Uy, and we are here to discuss Module 1, Introduction to Law.
yes, since we've been into this new normal, so this is our way of collaborating so that we could help you in any way possible.
Yes.
So, since Attorney Uy already said that we are discussing Module 1, we want you to know that the topics covered in this Module 1 are the following. First is the meaning of law. Second, the general divisions of law. Third, the subjects and concepts of law. Fourth, the characteristics and sources of law. Fifth, the classifications of law. And lastly, an introduction to the nature, definition of obligations and contracts. So, attorney, what is the intended learning outcome of this Module 1?
Yes. At the end of this module, the student should be able to discuss the definition of law in its specific or generic sense. Second, identify the primary and secondary sources of law. Third, emphasize the necessity and functions of law. So let's start.
Let's start. Since, as we've said, we are going to tackle the introduction to law, it's very important that we start with the meaning of law in general.
Yes.
So, ano ba tong meaning of law in general na tinutukoy, Attorney Uy?
Yes, according to De Leon Jr. in his Obligations and Contracts, the term law means any rule of action or any system of uniformity. That is the meaning of law in general.
In general. So,
Yes.
we have divisions of law.
Yes,
Okay.
the two general divisions of law. First, we have the law in its specific sense or in its strict legal sense, and the second is law in its non-legal sense.
Alright, so may pumasok dito sa atin na terminologies. Una is that yung strict legal sense, pangalawa, non-legal sense. So maganda siguro himayin natin to, isa-isahin natin para maintindihan ng mga bata, ng mga estudyante kung ano yung difference nito.
Yes.
Attorney, ano ba yung strict legal sense?
So, law in the strict legal sense, it also means state law. So, state law. And it is promulgated and enforced by the state.
Okay, so the reason why it's called state law kasi siya ay pinopromulgate
Ng state.
ng state.
Estado. Ng ating estado.
And later on,
Okay.
we'll be discussing on how these laws are...
Being passed
Yes.
from a bill to a law.
Yes, that's correct. So, reserve natin yan in the
In the latter portion,
portion
our
of this discussion.
Yes.
So, yung pangalawa naman, yung law in the non-legal sense, it
Yes.
includes the divine law, natural law,
Yes.
moral law, and
physical law.
physical law. And this is not promulgated or enforced by
By
the
the
state.
state. In contrary to the law in its strict legal sense.
Which is promulgated by the state.
Yes.
So siguro maganda na pag-usapan muna natin ano-ano ba yung examples ng law in the non-legal sense.
Yes.
Maybe we can start with the divine law.
Yes, divine law. In other term, yung divine law, it is also called philosophical theology. Okay, philosophical theology. It is the law of religion and faith which considers the concepts of sin and salvation being revealed or divulged to mankind by means of direct revelation.
So, yung divine law, it differs according to what
Yes.
one believes. to have been established and communicated to mankind by revelation.
Yes.
So, siguro, to shed light, let's give an example. No?
Yes. So, ang sabi lang dun sa the divine law differs according to what one's belief.
Mhm.
So, ibig sabihin, kung ano yung pinaniniwalaan ng isang tao o yung religious belief ng isang tao, dun yung pagkakaiba kung ano ba yung divine law sa kanila.
So, umiikot siya.
Okay.
In a way, para siyang subjective.
Yes, it is subjective. It depends upon one's religious beliefs.
So, for example, familiar naman tayo sa Ten Commandments,
Yes,
no?
Ten Commandments
When it comes to
for
Christianity, no?
Christianity.
So, that's embodied in the Old Testament. So,
Mhm.
that's an example of a
Divine law.
law. Ang counterpart naman nito, of course, when it comes to our brothers and sisters na
Muslims.
Muslims,
Yes.
they have their own, and that is Quran.
Yes,
Okay?
Quran.
Quran. Yes. So that's when it comes to divine law. Now, we have what we call natural law.
Yes.
So, ano ba itong natural law?
Yung natural law, it is the law from the word itself, the natural law of nature or metaphysics.
Mhm. Alright, so this is the divine inspiration in man in the sense of justice, fairness, and righteousness, not by divine revelation or formal promulgation, but by internal dictates of reason alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So ngayon may binabanggit ng justice, fairness, righteousness, and hindi daw by divine inspiration.
Mhm.
Okay.
But actually, yung natural law naman, it is regarded as reasonable basis of state law.
Yes.
Nabanggit ako kaninang state law, di ba? Nai-discuss natin later on. Pero ngayon pa lang, sinasabi dito na yung natural law, it's a basis for the state
State
that we
law.
have.
Yes. Okay. So, moral law. So, attorney, how about moral law? Again, to reiterate, ito po ay non-legal sense. Law in the non-legal sense, yung physical, natural, moral, and divine law.
So, nandun na tayo sa moral
Moral.
law. And as the question of what is moral law, this is more on the field of ethics, no? This is the totality, no? Yung totality of the norms of good and right conduct growing out of the collective sense of right and wrong of every community. Kasi tayo as a community, we have a collective sense na ng kung ano yung tama at
Tama,
mali. At
yes.
doon pumapasok yung moral law na tinatawag.
Yes. So, also, moral law, it is not absolute.
Mhm.
Why? Why is it not absolute?
It's not absolute nga kasi nga sabi nga natin yung collective sense ng kung ano yung tama at mali based on the community,
Yes.
no? So minsan kasi 'di ba may iba-iba tayong
Perspective,
yes,
kung ano ba yung tama. At saka, iba yung ating yung moral law, nag-iiba siya according to time, according to conditions, and
Mhm.
according to the
convictions
of the people.
So that means
Yes.
what may be moral, for
Today,
example, today may not be
moral in the future.
or in the
Yes.
past.
Yes, or in
Or
the past.
what is moral in the Philippines might not be moral in other countries.
Oh, yun yung convictions of the people.
Yes. So again, example nito, polygamy
Yes, polygamy.
and same-sex marriage, yung medyo controversial na
Yes.
naisipasang batas.
Polygamy meaning yung dalawa,
More
more than one ng iyong asawa.
Mhm. So,
Yun yung polygamy. Same-sex marriage, hindi kami same-sex.
yeah.
Same-sex, for example, a girl and a girl.
Halimbawa pa yung women's fashion. Ikaw,
Yes.
babae ka.
Women's
diba?
fashion. Before, hindi pwedeng ang girls magsuot ng shorts or yung mga spaghetti straps na damit. Pero ngayon, pwede na yan. Maluwag na ngayon yung batas for women's clothing or fashion.
Kasi nga nag-vary na yung time, no? I
Yes.
mean, iba na ngayon. So, again,
Iba na
it's
ang panahon
acceptable.
ngayon.
Yes.
Oo.
That's correct. So, let's go to this one. This is an interesting kind of law, especially
Yes.
sa akin kasi I'm also a civil engineer.
Yes, correct.
So, fascinated ako sa physics.
Kaya pag meron kayong tanong about engineering o about dito sa mga physics, sa kanya.
Or gusto niyo magpa-design, magpagawa ng
Yan,
bahay,
oo,
shameless plug.
correct.
So, you know, who to call. Okay? So again, physical law, the law of physical science or
Mhm.
physics, no? Yung uniformities of actions or orders of sequence which are physical phenomenon that we sense and feel in the operation or course of nature. Medyo nosebleed tong ano no. So, pero
napaka-technical.
yes, technical.
Kasi,
So,
physics.
let's give some examples, attorney.
So, law of gravity. Yung example ng law of gravity. Halimbawa, kayo, each one of you, sinabi ko na tumalon kayo from second floor to first floor. Tatalon kayo dyan sa bintana. Ano ang mangyayari? Sabi ng mga previous students ko, sabi nila, mamamatay daw pag tumalon.
That's agad.
Oo, that's agad-agad.
Agad-agad.
Mali yun, mali. Ang mangyayari, babagsak ka muna. At kung ang binagsakan mo, semento, patay ka nun. Pero may chances din naman na mabuhay ka.
Bali-bali.
Bali-bali nga lang.
So, ano yung reason? Bakit bumagsak? Hindi ba pwedeng biglang lumipad or mag-float?
Sige, attorney, dahil ikaw ay napaka-reliable na source, ano ang reason kung bakit babagsak tayo?
Yes. Well, ang reason doon, kasi meron tayong tinatawag na universal law of gravity.
Yeah,
No? That means we have this gravitational attraction from the inner core of the Earth. So, yan yung ano yan, tanda ko yung ano yan, yung value niyan, 9.81 meters per second squared gravitational acceleration. So, whatever comes up will fall down.
Yan,
Yun yung sinasabi ng
law of karma din yan.
Naipasok. Pwede din, no? May tinatawag pa tayo ditong law of inertia.
Law of inertia, siya na din.
PM nyo na lang ako kung gusto nyo itanong tong law of inertia, no? Pero, basically, this has something to do with physics. Parang ganito,
basically, tandaan nyo, basic ka.
halimbawa, nakasakay kayo sa jeep, biglang nagpreno. And tendency. Ano bang
pag nagpreno, hindi titigil yung sasakyan.
Oo, pero ikaw na nasa loob ng sasakyan, yung biglang preno, ano mangyayari sa'yo?
Ganun.
Magaganyan ka, di ba? Magaganyan ka, parang, ano ba tawag doon? Basta magaganon ka. So, isa yun sa tinatawag na law of inertia. So, inevitable. So, kailangan mo yung i-counter.
Yes.
Pero wag natin pumunta doon.
Oo, kaya physics yun. Yan yun na, kaya nga law ito, law, hindi physics.
Yes. So, doon tayo sa law, okay? So, again, yung apat na nabanggit natin, they are
the general division of law na nandoon sa law in the non-legal sense. Non-legal, yung padalwa.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're just done with the law in the non-legal sense. Maybe it's time for us to go to the law in a strict legal sense.
Yes.
So what is this about, attorney?
Yun yung huli, yung state law, yung letter E sa module nyo. Yung state law, the law in the strict legal sense. It is promulgated and enforced by the state. It is also called positive law, municipal law, imperative law, or civil law.
Yes, and for example, the law we speak of in connection with the law on obligations and contracts. Itong meron tayo, the law
Yung
on
nasa
marriage.
civil code,
Yes.
yan. The Civil Code of the Philippines, ano
It's a
yun?
state
State law.
law.
O yung Republic Act 9262, o yung violations against women and children.
Yes. So, even the administration of justice, yung conducts of election na meron tayo, and the entire governmental processes itself, they are part ng state law na tinatawag.
Yes.
And as a rule, only state law is promulgated and enforced by the state.
Mahalaga yun. Yung state law is promulgated and enforced by the state.
So, attorney, paano ba pina-promulgate?
Ayun nga, I think it is imperative for us to discuss yung three main branches of the government. Okay?
So, there are three main branches of the government. No?
Three main branches of the
Yes,
government.
and as a law student, it's very important that we know this basic, no?
Kahit hindi law student,
Yeah,
as
I agree.
a college
I
student,
agree.
kailangan alam nyo yan.
Yes.
So, unang-una sa three main branches of the government, we have the Article 6 of the Constitution.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Oo.
Wow.
Meron tayong Legislative Department.
Legislative, yes. Ano ba tong
Department.
legislative department na to?
So, Legislative Department, it composed of Senate or it composed the Congress. Congress, which is subdivided into lower house and upper house. Lower house, yun yung House of Representatives. Yan yung mga congressman na
Yan yung
sinasabi nyo.
representative ng legislative districts.
Yes,
Correct.
yung meron district and party list
Yes, may
representatives.
party list pa tayo.
Yes. And yun naman sa upper house, dyan yung senators, yung Senate. Upper house, composed of 24 senators.
Alright, so kung may Article 6 tayo sa Constitution
Yes.
pertaining to the legislative, meron din tayong Article 7.
Yes,
And
may
that
articles
is
sa
the
executive.
So yung executive
Department.
naman, class, guys, yun yung like si Tatay Digo, diba?
The president.
The president. Yung
Yan.
cabinet members na
Yes.
meron siya.
And again pala, dun yung function naman ng legislative department is to promulgate
Yan,
or
very
enact
important.
laws.
Yan.
Yan, sila yung sa state law na sinasabi yung promulgate. Yun, sila yun, yung legislative department.
Yes. So kung ang legislative department, sila yung nagpo-promulgate ng batas, ang executive, sila naman yung nag-e-execute
Yes,
or
or
nag-e-enforce or
Yes.
nag-i-implement
Yes,
ng
correct.
batas. So dyan papasok nga again ang Office of the President, the cabinet members na meron tayo.
Yes,
Kasi
yung mga
sila-
law enforcement agencies.
Yes. Sila yan. And of course, yung ating third branch ng government
Is found in Article 8 of the 1987 Constitution. Yan naman yung judiciary.
judiciary.
Yes,
Ano ba itong
judiciary. Yan yung mga court, Supreme Court, and such other lower courts.
So part of the judiciary, of course, nandyan din yung interpretation of the law. No?
Yes, interpretation of the law. Yan yung function ng judiciary.
Whenever there are conflicts, may
Yes.
kailangang i-resolve or pertaining to some legal disputes.
Yes, or may actual controversies.
Yes.
Yun.
Din papasok yung courts na meron tayo. And the highest of which is
The Supreme Court.
the court of last resort.
The court of
Okay?
last resort.
So take note of that. So again, it's the legislative or legislature that promulgates the law
Yes.
that we have.
Sila yung naggagawa, promulgates or enact laws,
Enact.
executive, execute,
Yes.
or implement or enforce the law,
Mhm.
and judiciary, sila yung nag-i-interpret ng batas.
Yes.
Okay, so magbigay kaya tayo ng example.
Okay, sige.
Okay,
Example.
example, yung bayanihan to recover as
Yeah,
one act.
to heal as one.
Okay, yung batas na yan, bago siya maging law, ang tawag pa dyan, bill.
Bill.
Oh,
So,
bill.
Depende kung saan nagsimula.
Yes.
Pwedeng sa
Pwedeng sa
lower
lower
house.
house, sa House of Representatives, pwedeng sa Senate, or sa upper house.
Mhm. So for example, attorney nanggaling sa, let's just say it's coming from the upper house, let's just say. The bill is initiated by the Senate.
Yes.
Anong susunod doon? Halimbawa, inaprubahan ng Senate yung bill itself. Automatic na ba yun na magiging batas?
Hindi, kasi according sa ating constitution, kailangan may concurrence of the two houses. So kung nagmula sa Senate, kailangan at naipasa sa Senate, nakuha yung required vote para maipasa yung batas na yun, kailangan pa din siyang dumaan sa lower house, sa House of Representatives. And the same is true when the bill is initiated
By
in the
the
House of Representatives. It must also be approved by the Senate.
Yes.
Yes.
So, in the example that we've given, if it's initiated by the Senate, then it's approved by the Senate, and now it's passed to the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives, let's just say they approve it.
Yes.
What's gonna happen
So
next?
meron ng concurrence meron ng approval ng two houses. O na-approve sa
Is
Senate.
that a law already?
Hindi pa.
So, anong gagawin na after that?
So ang gagawin, they must present yung batas na naipasa kay President. Kay President Duterte.
Yes, in this case. So, if for example, President Duterte receives the...
So meron dalawang option si President kung
Yeah.
anong gagawin dun sa batas na naipresent ng Senate.
And the first option, for example, if the President is not in favor of the bill that's being passed by the Congress,
Yes.
the President might
He might veto.
So, ano ba yung veto?
Una muna, kung gusto niya, sign. Walang problema. He must sign.
Na-sign it.
Pangalawa, kung ayaw niya, i-veto. So, ano ba ibig sabihin
Ibig sabihin ng veto, meron siyang mga objections.
Yes,
no?
ayaw niya.
So,
o
kailangan,
kaya gusto niya, pero ayaw niya dun sa ibang provisions.
So, what the President must do in that case is to return the
Yes,
bill to
correct.
the House where it originated, expressing his objections.
Yes.
No? And yun yung tinatawag na veto power. Pero, paano kung hindi naman siya nag-express ng kanyang objection, wala namang veto, pero in action lang ang ginawa niya. In a way, parang hinayaan niya lang.
Oo.
Na
Hinayaan
yung
niya lang,
bill.
wala siyang ginawa. Pinaresend sa kanya yung bill, hindi siya nag-sign, hindi nag-veto. Wala siyang ginawa.
Isn't it na ma-stuck tayo? Parang ano mangyayari doon?
No. So, mangyayari doon, kung within 30 days upon receipt of the bill, hindi naaktuhan ng President, hindi nag-sign, hindi nag-veto, upon the expiration of the 30-day period, the bill now becomes a law as if the President signed the same.
So, yun pala yun. So, automatically, it will also be considered as a state law.
Yes,
no?
state law.
Promulgated pa rin yan ng state natin.
Yes.
Okay. So, doon papasok yung blending of powers ng
Yes.
three
main branches
Three main
of the
branches.
government.
So, in passing a law, nagkakaroon ng blending of powers.
Oo.
Okay?
So, kagaya nung example natin, yung bayanihan. O, sino nagpasa nun? Sino nag-enact nun? Ang nag-enact nun, Congress, House of Representatives, concurred by the Senate, tapos binigay kay President Duterte for his signature, for his approval, na-sign. O di, naging law na siya. From a bill, it becomes a law. And ang power naman ng executive, yung mga DILG, yung mga DOJ, DOH, o di ba? Merong power sila na ibinigay yung law. Yun sila ang mag-e-enforce noon.
Even the LGUs.
Even the LGUs.
Yes. So that's the reason why wala tayong choice ngayon kundi magsuot ng face mask.
Yes.
Diba?
Kasi yun yung nakalagay sa batas. At pag hindi ka nasuot ng face mask, huhulihin ka ng mga
may sanctions.
Oo, may sanctions.
So yun yung isang pinagkaiba ng state law compared to other law in a non-strict legal sense.
Yes,
Correct?
may sanctions, may penalties, may punishments pag hindi ka sumunod.
So, attorney, ano ba yung mga subjects of law na yan? Yung
Subjects
mga
of law.
Yes.
So, state law, divine law, natural law, and moral law are considered in the definition of law as a rule of action, and it applies to men only as rational beings.
So, men lang.
Tao lang. Kasi ang aso naman, ang mga pets natin, wala naman silang divine law, wala naman silang religion.
Yes. How about physical law?
Physical law, what are the subjects of physical law? It operates on all things, including men, without regard to the latter's use of their willpower and intelligence.
Kasi pag sinabi natin physical law, you cannot do anything against it. I mean,
Yes.
like the universal law on gravity.
Yes.
Wala. Talagang
Hindi mo na
pagpamaligid
maalis yung gravity.
Yes.
Oo.
Yes. So they're trying to do it in a vacuum, pero talagang hanggang ngayon, hirap na hirap.
So,
sila.
ibig sabihin, sa physical law, kasama ang men and all things.
Yes.
Unlike sa state law, moral law, divine law, kasama lang dun is men as rational
As a subject.
beings. Yes.
Now, yes, maybe it's time for us to proceed again dun sa concept of state law. Law in its general sense. Ano ba yung state law in its general sense?
So, in its general sense, law refers to all laws taken together. All laws taken together. So, ang meaning niya, the mass of obligatory rules established for the purpose of governing the relation of persons in society.
So, example niyan, yung law of the land, the rule of law, and not of men, or equality before the law, and the enforcement of the law, etc. Right.
Yes.
So, law in its specific sense naman, it's a rule of conduct, just, obligatory, promulgated by legitimate authority and of common observance and benefit. Ito
Yes.
actually yung definition na hindi ko makalimutan.
Yes.
Kasi the first time I was asked in law school, what is law? Ito talaga yung...
Yan yung meaning ng law
meaning
talaga. At dyan tayo magde-derive ng characteristics of law.
Alright, so to my students or to attorney who is students, please take note of this definition. Okay, so again, it's a rule of conduct, just, obligatory, promulgated by legitimate authority, and
Of common observance and benefit.
ayan. So I think it's time for us na i-dissect din naman natin ano ba yung characteristics of law para bago tayo pumunta sa law on obligations and contracts, maintindihan natin ano-ano nga ba itong characteristics.
Yes. So first, we'll enumerate the characteristics of law. Always remember the ROPC.
ROPC.
ROPC. First, law is a rule of conduct. Pangalawa, law is obligatory. Pangatlo, law is promulgated by legitimate authority. And last, law is of common observance and benefit.
Yes.
R, rule of conduct. O, obligatory. P, promulgated by legitimate authority. And C, of common observance and benefit. So, attorney, why is law considered as a rule of conduct?
Yes, it's a rule of conduct kasi nga, yung batas, sinasabi niya sa atin kung ano ba yung dapat natin gawin at hindi natin dapat gawin. As a civilized nation or as a civilized society, meron tayo mga limitations, prohibitions.
At may standards.
Yes, there must be a standard and that is expressly provided dun sa batas na tinutukoy natin kung ano yung bawal at hindi bawal.
Example ng law, na rule of conduct, pagsusuot ng face mask.
Sa ngayon.
Yun ang dapat natin gawin. Ano naman yung hindi natin dapat gawin? Di yung pagdidikit-dikit, kailangan din ng social distancing. Hindi dapat tayo magdikit-dikit.
Especially pag may liquor ban.
Yes, yun. Bawal yun. Correct.
Pag sinabing ban,
what
bawal.
shall not be done? Bawal mag-inom.
So, nasabi dito, attorney, na it's obligatory. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng obligatory?
Obligatory meaning, it is a positive command imposing a duty to obey. And in case of non-observance sa batas, may sanctions and punishments.
I think,
obligatory.
Tayo naman, even sa parents natin, mga bata pa lang tayo, na-experience natin yan, di ba? Kapag
Oo.
merong, halimbawa, utos or meron silang tinuturo sa atin na hindi natin sinusunod, merong sanctions, mapapalo tayo. And basically, that's it di ba? I mean, meron sa batas, sa bahay, sa classroom may batas.
Oo. Bawal pag sinabi, bawal lumabas. Pero pag nag-comply ka naman,
pwede pala lumabas. Yung nga pala kay Kim Chu. Pero yun nga, parang ganun lang din yun sa bahay natin. So it starts from our homes. Now, it's promulgated by legitimate authority.
Ayan na yung sinasabi natin kanina. Sino ba nagpo-promulgate ng batas? Sino yung legitimate authority na nag-promulgate ng batas? So, ang answer is legislature. Nasagot na natin yan kanina. Article 6 of the Constitution, we have Congress, we have two houses, the lower and the upper houses.
Yes, and that's those are what we call statutes. Pero yung bang mga local government units natin, attorney, meron din ba silang power to enact
ordinance?
Local law, which is
local law. Yun yung ordinance.
Ordinance.
Para mas malinaw na din, i-discuss na din natin, sino ba yung local legislative body in the province.
Yes.
Sa province, ang local legislative body natin ay yung mga board members.
Sangguniang Panlalawigan.
Sangguniang Panlalawigan. Si Bart Blanco tsaka si Bukala Ambida. Dito sa Batangas. Yun.
Pagdating naman sa city,
ang local legislative body natin ay Sangguniang Panlungsod.
Okay. Paano pag hindi city?
Yung municipality, di Sangguniang Bayan, SB. Pag ang municipality, kagaya ng San Pascual Municipality, Sangguniang Bayan.
Paano naman yung sa barangay level?
Sa barangay, meron din. Kagawad. Kagawad naman yun.
Sangguniang barangay.
Sanggundi. Barangay Kagawad. Kaloka.
So, sila rin.
Sila ang local legislative authority.
And meron ba yung binding force din?
Yes, there is a binding, but within the scope of their territory.
Jurisdiction.
Territorial jurisdiction. So, sino naman yung local executive ng province? Ang local executive ng province ay Governor. Si Governor Mandanas.
Hindi ko mali ang masasagot. So, Governor.
Ang local executive naman ng city.
Siyempre, si Mayor.
Si Mayora, si Yorme. Yan.
Pag naman sa barangay.
Sa municipality, city municipality, si Mayor. Sa barangay, edi si Kapitan.
Si Pangulo.
Si Pangulo, Pangula, kung anong tawag nyo.
Okay, so part yan ng may binding force din yung batas na ipinapasa nila.
Yes.
No, ano ba yung purpose? Bakit ba kailangan natin ng batas?
Yun na yung nasa huling characteristic. Kailangan natin ng batas kasi it is of for common observance and benefit.
And that means to
It regulates.
the relations of men to maintain harmony in society. Because, we cannot just imagine a society where there is no law.
Yes,
Diba?
there's no
Sobrang
law.
chaotic niyan. So that's why it's very important para
Correct.
i-observe yung bawat isa.
Yes.
Okay?
So, we always remember characteristics of law, ROPC. Law is a rule of conduct. Law is obligatory. Law is promulgated by legitimate authority. And law is of common observance and benefit.
Now we're done with the characteristics. It's interesting to know the sources of law.
Yes. So, sources of law, di ba, alam natin kahit saang sources, merong primary at merong secondary.
Yes.
Okay?
So,
What are the primary sources of law?
yes, the primary sources of law, of course, lalagay pa ba tayo? Meron tayong constitution. No?
Yes.
It's, of course, the fundamental law or the supreme law or the highest law of the land. Because, again, it's promulgated by the people themselves. So, kanina, sabi natin yung state law, di ba, promulgated yan ng legislature.
Yes.
Yan. Pero ang constitution, ibang klase to, ibang level to, kasi it's the people talaga nagpo-promulgate nito. And therefore, it's binding on all individual citizens and all agencies of the government. No?
Yes. Does it necessarily mean that the Constitution is higher than the legislature, than legislations or statutes?
Statutes. Well, the general rule is that, again, Constitution is the highest or the supreme law of the land. So, shall there be a conflict between the Constitution and the state law? For example, yun nga, yung statutes ng legislature, mag-give way lagi itong statutes kasi nga, dapat hindi unconstitutional. Yun yung reason kaya lagi nagbabanggaan yan sa Supreme Court.
Kagaya ng anti-terrorism law.
Oo, marami ngayong pending.
Madaming pending because of constitutional violations daw.
Allegedly.
Oo, allegedly. Sabi ng mga
paglabag.
petitioners, may mga paglabag sa constitutional
Press
rights ng mga
freedom.
tao. Press freedom,
Yes.
madam freedom of speech.
Yes.
Dahil dyan. And,
So kung halimbawa, attorney,
okay.
mapatunayan sa Supreme Court na yung halimbawa, yung specific provision sa anti-terror law ay contrary sa sinasaad ng Constitution, ano mangyayari doon?
So it does not necessarily mean na yung buong anti-terrorism law ay magiging void o mapapawalang bisa.
Alright.
Ang magiging effect lang nun is to nullify the specific provision which is contrary to the Constitution.
And we will strike it out and declare it as unconstitutional.
Yes, yun lang.
Okay.
Pero kung lahat ng provisions ng anti-terrorism law violative of the constitutional rights.
Then in that case, we will abandon the law itself. Kasi dun mapapakita na, again, the Constitution is supreme. So anything against the Constitution
shall be declared null and void.
Null and void. Right? Take note of
Kaya siya tawag supreme law, fundamental, and highest law. Dahil anything that goes beyond the Constitution or is contrary to the Constitution is null and void.
Let's just have a test, no? Since napag-usapan naman natin yung three branches of the government. In this case, sino ngayon ang magde-declare na? Sino ngayon ang merong power, authority dyan? Attorney.
Sino?
Sino?
Starts with letter J.
J. Legislative.
Executive. The judiciary.
Kasi nga sila mag-i-interpret ng batas kung contrary to.
Yan, in case of actual controversies.
Yes. Alright, so next primary source of law natin is?
The legislation. So it is the preponderant source of law in the Philippines. And it is the declaration of rules by competent authority, which is the legislature. And legislation likewise includes ordinances enacted by the LGUs or local government units. Lagi nating naririnig yung mga LGUs ngayon sa TV.
Kasi nga sila hands-on pagdating sa situation natin dito sa pandemic. Okay, so let's proceed with the next one. Administrative or executive orders and implementing rules and regulations. Kung makikita ninyo, yung legislation coming from the legislature, no? Ngayon naman, pwede rin palang manggaling sa executive
Department.
Paano yung mangyayaring galing sa executive
Through
department?
various agencies and
Yes.
departments.
Halimbawa ngayon, sikat na sikat ang DOH.
Yes,
Diba?
DOH.
Maglalabas yan ng mga
DILG.
mga
Oh.
implementing rules and regulations.
DSWD sa mga SAP.
Yes.
Oh. Kasi, di ba, ang law, legislation, halimbawa, yung Bayanihan to Heal as one act or yung Bayanihan to Recover as one act. May provision, for example, dyan na SAP, ang DSWD, inuutusan na magbigay ng SAP sa mga affected citizens dahil ng COVID-19. O ngayon, ang DSWD as an administrative or executive agency, dahil yun ay kabilang sa cabinet ng president. So, ang DSWD will promulgate an IRR or implementing rules and regulations regarding the distribution of SAP.
Kasi understandably, hindi naman included dun sa original na batas. Yung IRR.
Kung paano mo i-implement yung pagbibigay ng SAP, for
so, in a way, the executive is given somehow a discretion pagdating sa sa implementation.
Kaya implementation nila ang executive.
Yes. That's correct. Okay. So, just because it's the DOH or the DSWD na nagbibigay ng mga tinatawag nating administrative orders na yan, it doesn't mean na hindi yun batas. Okay? It has a binding effect.
Yes, because ang source niya is yung batas.
Yes. Nagaling naman sa
legislature. Correct.
So yung last natin, kung meron na tayo ng coming from the legislature and then we have from the executive, syempre hindi papahuli ang
judiciary.
So meron
yung mga judicial decisions or jurisprudence.
Yes. So yung decisions of the courts, particularly the Supreme Court, applying or interpreting the laws or the Constitution, they form part of the legal system in the Philippines, and that's included in the Article 8 of the new Civil Code. So kapag nag-decide pala ang Supreme Court sa isang particular controversy,
particular issue or a case,
that should be considered as a law.
Yung decision ng Supreme Court resolving that particular case, yun ay magiging parte ng legal system of the Philippines.
Yes, and sa batas or sa study of law, tinatawag yan na doctrine of
stare decisis.
Stare decisis or yung doctrine of precedent.
Yes, precedent.
Precedent.
President, hindi president.
President.
President, P-R-E-C-E-D-E-N-T.
Ako dati ang pronunciation ko dyan, president.
President.
Pero I've learned na president. So, president. Okay, so yun yung tinatawag na doctrine of stare decisis, na pag nag-decide na ang Supreme Court as regards that particular controversy or issue, yun na yung batas doon. Unless, of course, the Supreme Court itself would abandon that doctrine.
Would modify, would review or revise that decision.
But nobody else can do that.
Ang sinasabi lang dyan sa Article 8 of the Civil Code, only the decisions of the Supreme Court. Meron tayong lower courts like RTC, NTC, Court of Appeals, Court of Tax Appeals, may Sandigan Bayan pa. Yung decisions nila, they do not really form part of the law of the land. Hindi yon. Decisions only of the Supreme Court being the final arbiter or court of last resort. Yun lang ang magiging form part of the law of the land.
Alright, take note of that.
Yes.
And last but not the least, for the primary source of law, we have what we call custom. Itong custom naman, it consists of those habits and practices which through long and uninterrupted usage have become acknowledged and approved by society as binding rules of conduct. Bakit ba may ganito? May custom?
Actually, kaya ako natawa kanina sa namin mong custom. Last semester kasi may mga estudyante tayong customs administration at ang tataba ng utak ng mga batang ito. Ano daw pinagkaiba ng custom na yan doon sa custom na course nila? Ano nga ba? Napaisip. Ang taba ng utak. Hindi ko naisip yun.
Alright, pero itong custom na to,
Yes.
of course, it must be proved as a fact according to the rules of evidence. Ibig sabihin, kailangan mapatunayan na for a long
period of time, yun na yung pinapractice ng mga tao doon.
Pero,
sa community.
attorney, ano ba? Lagi ba itong i-apply ng court? I mean, yan ba ay supreme na dapat laging ina-apply?
It may be applied by courts in the absence of statute exactly applicable to the point in controversy. Meaning, kung may law applicable to that particular controversy, no need to look for customs, no need to apply the customs. Pero kung wala talagang batas na nag-govern doon sa particular issue, sa particular case, pwedeng i-apply ng courts yung custom. With the condition na kailangan ito ay recognized and
Proved. May evidence talaga.
Yes, dapat may evidence talaga na mag-i-establish na yun talaga ay yung custom sa
Dun sa lugar na
particular
yun.
community.
Okay. So,
Oo.
siguro, let's give an example para mas mabigyan natin ng linaw to. For example, in a contract of services rendered where no definite compensation is stipulated or wala na pag-usapan. Kumbaga, kinuha, for example, ni attorney, oy, ang serbisyo ko, naggamas ako sa harap ng bahay nila, di ba? So, naggamas ako, hindi naman namin napag-usapan kung magkano ang babayad niya sa
Basta
akin.
umuo lang siya.
Umuo lang ako,
Oo.
di ba? So, may kontrata naman nga kasi hindi napag-usapan kung
Yung
magkano.
compensation.
So, ang tanong, paano ako babayaran? Does that mean hindi na ako babayaran?
Oo, dahil wala kami na pag-usapan, hindi ko na siya babayaran. Ang,
So, in that
ang
case,
tanong, hindi. Given na dito na walang law applicable dun sa amin.
So, in that case, titingnan natin yung custom ng lugar.
Ng lugar.
Kung magkano ba talaga ang
Oo.
ibabayad.
Kasi kagaya sa inyo, lalo na yung mga taga-bukid, mahilig magpagamas, magpa-ganon. Wala naman ding law na nagsasabi, pag nagpalaba ka, dapat ganito ang bayad mo. Dapat pag nagpatabas ka, ganito yung bayad mo. Wala naman. So kung ano yung nakagawian doon sa inyong lugar, na kung magkano ibinabayad, itigion na din ang inyong ibabayad. Halimbawa dito sa Batangas City, pag ikaw ay nagpatabas dito, magkano ibinabayad? For example, 500.
Parang
Hindi
araw.
500.
Araw,
Oo.
ano yung...
Ay halimbawa sa San Pascual, nagpagamas ka doon, ang binabayad doon 300.
Mas
Di
mura.
300, mas mura.
So, yung custom nga kasi, iba-iba, depende dun sa lugar.
Yes.
Okay? So, hindi mo pwedeng i-uniform yan, standard sa lahat ng
Yes.
lugar.
Kaya hindi rin siya kaagad-agad na pwedeng i-apply ng courts in case of actual controversies.
Yes, that's correct.
Oo.
Alright, so basically that's the primary sources of law, the constitution, the legislation, the administrative or executive orders,
And
the judicial decisions, and jurisprudence, and of course the custom na
Custom.
pinag-usapan natin. No, kung may primary sources, meron ding secondary sources.
secondary sources.
So, ano naman yung secondary sources?
Because they're only supplementary or they are resorted only by the courts in the absence of all other sources of law.
So kung may primary sources of law,
No need
No
for
need.
secondary.
so parang
Oo.
ito back up.
Oo, back up lang. Nagsusupplement lamang siya kung walang primary sources of law.
Yung secondary sources of law, are they binding? Are they binding in the court?
They are not binding in the courts
But
and they only have persuasive effects.
persuasive effects lang.
Persuasive, hindi mandatory na i-apply ng court.
Mhm.
Yan.
So ang example niyan, yung principles of justice and equity, decisions of foreign tribunal, halimbawa mga decisions ng halimbawa courts in the United States
Yes.
or nearby countries na meron tayo.
Halimbawa,
Kind of
wala
persuasive.
tayong sa commercial law. Our commercial laws are derived from the US commercial law. O dun sa specific na controversy, walang law na nag-govern, walang Philippine law governing such controversy kung paano i-resolve. Our courts may apply yung decisions of US courts regarding that particular issue.
And it has a persuasive effect. No? It can persuade the court. And other than that, meron din tayong opinions of text writers, yung mga legal luminaries natin dyan,
Yes.
ng mga established talaga na aral sa batas, no? Yung kanilang
Sina
mga
Manresa,
Manresa,
yan.
Sanchez Roman.
Sanchez Roman, yan.
Yan. And of course, next to that is religion. Pwede rin maging basis talaga.
Pwede rin.
Marami na tayong mga cases sa Supreme Court wherein nagamit yung religion.
Kagaya ng reproductive health.
Mm.
Tsaka yung same-sex, di ba, nandala na yun dun sa Supreme Court. Pero ang Supreme Court, binasura. Yung
But it
same-sex
doesn't mean
marriage.
naman na in the coming days or years, hindi siya ma-approve.
Oo.
Just sabi na sa ngayon, ganun
Kasi
yung
nga, sabi nga
situation.
natin, nagbabago naman ang pananaw
May
ng mga
bar.
tao.
Yes. Alright, so proceeding, let's proceed to the classifications of law.
Classifications of law. So we have two classifications of law. Una, yung according to purpose, at yung pangalawa is according to subject matter. So first is...
As to its purpose, meron tayong dalawa. Substantive law and adjective law. So isa-isahin natin yan, no? Substantive law, it's of course yung portion of the body of law creating, defining, and regulating rights and duties which may be either public or private in character.
Yes. So ang keyword ni dyan is the law creating, defining, and regulating rights and duties.
Sila yung nag-create, nagde-define, at nagre-regulate.
Yes. Ang example natin dyan is the law on obligations and contracts.
Yes. Kung ano yung mismo
Nasa
subject
civil
matter
code.
natin.
Bakit? Kasi yung law on obligations and contracts, siya ay law creating, defining, regulating rights and duties of the obligor and obligee.
Pero attorney, may nabanggit kasi dyan na yung defining, regulating rights and duties which may be either public or private. Yung bang law on obligations and contracts, is it a private or a public law?
It is a private law kasi it only serves private ends. Private individual to private individual. Law on obligations
Contracting
and
parties,
contracts.
for
Yes.
example. No?
Yes.
Pero we have what we call the public law naman.
Public
na pwedeng
law.
substantive law. And an example of that is...
Is the criminal law.
Yes.
Kasi bakit? Bakit ang criminal law is a public law?
Public law kasi even if when it comes to criminal cases, there is a private offended party.
Yes.
The state is still interested in pursuing this, yung justice dyan, or i-pursue talaga yung case kasi ang gusto ng Estado is mapanatili yung peace and order.
Yes.
Kaya,
at saka yung akusado is considered as a threat to the society.
Yes.
Kaya
Menace,
kailangan
diba?
Mapanagot yung may sala.
Yes. Kaya naman pagdating sa criminal cases, makikita niyo yung mga title dyan, People of the Philippines versus People of the Philippines versus kung sino yung akusado. Kasi kapag ikaw gumawa ka ng criminal act, no?
Yes.
Kalaban mo ang buong Pilipinas. Yun ang
Yes.
ibig sabihin yan, people
of the Philippines.
Kaya siya public.
Versus Juan de la Cruz for estafa or for rape.
Halimbawa naman kami ni Attorney Uy, nagkaroon kami naman ng dispute. May utang ako halimbawa sa kanya. Hindi yun People of the Philippines versus Marali. Diba? It would be Uy versus Marali. Kasi nga siya ay private law.
Private law, yung obligations and contracts, yung
yes.
utang.
Yung utang.
Pero dun sa rape, dun sa estafa, halimbawa, ay committed estafa, siya naman rape. Halimbawa, people versus Juan de la Cruz for estafa. The state is always the offended party.
Yes.
Although may private offended party, kanino siya nag-commit ng estafa? Si Juan de la Cruz. For example, kay Pedro.
It's a private party, pero
Private
again,
party.
it's ang magpo-pursue niyan, it's the
Kaya meron din tayong prosecutors when it comes to criminal cases. Ang prosecutors ang nag-prosecute.
pursue. Alright?
Nagpo-pursue.
So, after substantive law, we have what we call adjective law.
Adjective
Ano yung
law.
adjective na yan?
Adjective law is that portion of the body of law prescribing the manner or procedure by which rights may be enforced or their violations redressed. Sometimes this is called remedial or procedural law.
Yeah.
So ito namang adjective law, ang keyword niyo dyan is it prescribes the manner or procedure by which rights may be enforced or their violations be
Yes.
redressed.
Kasi nga, sa subjective law, di ba dinefine doon, ano ba yung mga rights mo?
Yes, substantive.
Yes.
Substantive.
Kaso, just because your rights are being defined by subjective law doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to enforce it.
Yes.
Doon papasok yung adjective law.
Yes.
Kasi pinaprovide ng adjective law, paano mo ba i-enforce yung mga karapatan na meron ka? At kaya yung tinatawag na procedural law. Halimbawa, yung mga procedures.
Yung kanina, yung sa utang.
Mm.
Yung siya may utang sa akin. Yun ay nasa Oblicon, for example, may utang siya. It is not enough na may law na nagde-define kung ano yun. Dapat meron din kung paano, ano ang remedyo mo, paano ka makakakolekta ng iyong pautang sa isang tao.
Yes. At yun na nga yung tinatawag natin remedial law or procedural law. For example, yung mga laws natin when it comes sa courts, di ba?
Sa courts.
Sa rules of court.
Rules of court, rules of civil procedure,
Yes.
rules of criminal procedure, rules on evidence, special proceedings, yan, mga adjectives. Yan. Kagaya ng utang, for example, nakalagay sa substantive law, sa obligations and contracts, na nangutang si Benrick, siya ang obligor, siyang nangutang, siyang obligor. Ako yung obligee creditor. Oh. So, ako yung nagpautang. So, may rights and duties kami under the substantive law. Ano yung duties ni Attorney Maralit? Magbayad ng utang. Ano yung rights ko? Eh di mangulit, maningil ng utang upon due date.
So, define na yun sa subjective law.
Define na yun sa substantive law.
Sa substantive law.
Ang adjective law naman, ang nagsasabi, paano ko makukolekta ang utang ko kay Attorney Maralit? Eh di, ang nakalagay dun sa revised rules on civil procedure sa claims o gagawa ka ng demand letter first para makasingil. O pag hindi pa rin siya nagbayad o nag-default pa rin siya kahit may demand letter, dun ka na pwede mag-file ng case in court. Diyan na yung adjective law. So meaning, attorney, kung hindi sapat ang substantive law lang.
Hindi talaga.
Oo, kasi i-define lang niya yung rights and duties. Yung mahalaga din yung adjective law. Kasi kung walang adjective law, paano mo i-enforce yung right and duties?
Kasi hindi ko naman pwedeng tutukan ng baril si attorney, uy, para magbayad siya sa akin. Di ba? Kasi I'll be committing a criminal offense.
Yes.
No? So, kailangan talaga alam natin kung ano yung adjective law.
Yes.
Okay.
So, they coexist.
Yes.
Yes.
And, kumbaga, they help one another.
Yes.
Para
Kasi si adjective law, kung puro manner and procedure at wala namang substantive law, walang basis ng adjective
law. So in short, there can be no adjective law if there's no substantive law to begin with.
Yes.
Right?
Although pwedeng magkaroon ng substantive law na walang adjective law.
Yes.
Pero walang ngipin yung batas. Hindi ba i-enforce?
That's correct. Alright. So we've been learning, no? So let's proceed. Classification of law now as to its subject matter. Ito na yun, yung pinag-usapan natin, public law and private law. No? So, again, yung public law is the body of legal rules which regulates the rights and duties arising from the relationship of the state to the people. So, ang parties involved dito, yung Estado, the state, at yung mga tao.
Kaya siya public law. Ang keyword dyan is the relationship of the state to the people.
So, example nga nito ay yung criminal law,
yes,
no? Yung
criminal law,
international law, constitutional law, administrative law, and the criminal procedure that we have. These are public laws na meron tayo.
Kasi it involves the relationship of the state or the government to its people or citizens.
Yes. Now, proceeding to private law, ano naman to, Attorney Uy, private law?
It is the body of rules which regulates the relations of individuals with one another for purely private ends. Yan na yun. Yan yun. Nakalagay din dyan, the law and obligations of and contracts is an example.
So, the state is involved in private law as it enforces private law but simply as an arbiter and not as a party.
That is the difference. Doon sa public law kasi, ang state is a party. The state is a party. Dito naman sa private law, the state is not a party but merely an arbiter. Kagaya ng courts. Yung courts, yan parte ng state natin. Pero hindi parte ang courts ng ating cases. They are only the arbiter. Yung forum kung saan ka magfa-file ng cases.
And the private law includes civil law, commercial law,
and civil procedure. Yes.
Okay, so let's define yung law and obligations and contracts kasi yun naman talaga yung mismong subject matter natin. No? So, Attorney Uy, what is the law on obligations and contracts?
Yes. The law on obligations and contracts is the body of rules which deals with the nature and sources of obligations and the rights and duties arising from agreements and the particular contracts.
So, again, it's dealing with the nature and sources of obligations kasi nga this law on obligations and contracts is a what kind of law is this?
Private
this one
law.
is a private law and a substantive.
Yes, substantive law. Kaya merong it regulates, diba, rights and obligations.
Yes.
Tsaka yung sources of obligations.
And itong law on obligations and contracts, saan ba natin ito makikita?
It is found in Republic Act or RA number 386 or otherwise known as the Civil Code of the Philippines.
And it
which
took effect?
On August 30, 1950.
Buhay ka na ba?
Noong 1950, hindi pa din buhay ang mga magulang ko.
Yung nanay ko buhay na.
Oo.
Okay. So it is based mainly on the Civil Code of Spain, which took effect in the Philippines on December 7, 1889. Alam naman natin yung kwento ng ating bansa, no? So largely affected tayo ng
Spanish colonization.
Yes, colonization. That's why yung batas natin galing din sa Civil Code of Spain.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So Civil Code provisions on obligations and contracts, again, it's found in Book
4 of the Civil Code of the Philippines. Nasa Book 4 siya.
And particularly, we're interested dun sa general provisions on obligations.
On obligations na it is contained in Title 1, Articles 1156 to 1304 of the Civil Code.
That's the first part, so obligations.
Yes.
How about the second part,
Yung
so
sa contracts naman is found in Title 2 in Articles 1305 to 1422.
So we have obligations, contracts, and then we have what we call natural
obligations. They're found in Title 3, Articles 1423 to 1430 of the Civil Code.
So alam mo ba lahat?
Papunta na.
Wow, sana all. So now, siguro in closing, kasi alam ko gusto niyo pang mag-discuss kami dito ng marami pa. Pero i-reserve natin banda dyan kasi sabi natin, we have 8 modules, no? So first module pa lang naman to. And ang dami na natin napag-usapan. Pero yun nga, in the coming modules that we have, we will be talking ni Attorney Uy or magdi-discuss pa kami sa marami pang topics. Pero ngayon, importante na pag-usapan natin tong conclusive presumption of the knowledge of the law. Attorney Uy, ano ba tong sinasabi natin?
So, the important provision is Article 3 of the Civil Code na nagsasabi na ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith. Paliwanag mo nga yun, Attorney Merali.
So, ito yung tinatawag nating ignorantia legis non excusa.
Yan. Wow. Ignorantia legis non excusa.
Non excusa. So, ibig sabihin nito, lahat tayo ay conclusively presumed to know the law and that good faith and ignorance thereof cannot be invoked as a valid defense in case of violations. Ibig sabihin nito guys, lahat tayo, even if di mo nabasa yung batas, even if hindi mo alam kung ano ang sinasabi ng batas, tayo daw ay ipinapalagay na naintindihan at alam natin yung batas. Ibig sabihin, parang ingrained sa atin na may existing na batas.
Implied na yun, na pag may batas, implied yun na matik, kumbaga sa salitang kanto, matik na yun na alam natin.
Ano bang importance kaya nito? Bakit we should be conclusively presumed?
Bakit kaya ang turing ng batas meron tayong conclusive knowledge? Kasi nga dun sa Article 2 of the Civil Code, dahil nakalagay doon, pinapublish kasi lahat ng batas.
Saan?
Sa Official Gazette. Ipinapublish dun. So ikaw, as a citizen of the Philippines, you have the duty to read the law or to be informed of the law. At kapag hindi mo siya nabasa or sabihin mo, ay hindi ko alam yan, yung batas
good faith
na yan.
naman ako.
Oo, good faith naman ako, hindi ko naman talaga alam. Hindi yun defense. Hindi yun ang excuse para ma-absolve ka from liability.
And once it's published in the Official Gazette, ilang days ba bago yun maging effective ang batas na yan?
15 days.
Upon
15 days.
Publishing sa Official Gazette. So, pinapakita lang dito, guys, na yung batas na meron tayo, on a practical side of things, no? Kapag pwedeng i-rebut, kasi conclusive to eh. As contrary to rebuttable presumption. So pag rebuttable presumption to, di pwede na tayong alibay lahat, di ba?
Hindi namin alam. Di ba? Kahit alam natin, sasabihin natin, hindi natin alam.
So, halimbawa, Attorney Uy, ako, galing ako sa kasi taga Mindoro. So halimbawa, galing ako sa bundok, sa Mindoro. Taga bundok ako eh. Tapos di ko alam yung batas, sa traffic lights. Di ko alam na ano ba ibig sabihin ng red, yellow, green. Ang pagkakaintindi ko halimbawa ay ang red ay go, ang green ang stop. Halimbawa lang So ako nasa bumaba ako ng bayan, Batangas City
oo.
for example, tapos nakita ko red, nag-go ako.
Oo.
Ngayon,
No signal daw yung red.
ngayon inano ako ng TDRO, pinatigil ako.
Oo.
Pwede ko bang sabihin na hindi ko po alam dahil ang alam ko ay galing akong bundok at ang alam ko ay ang pula ay go. Pwede ba
Oo.
yan, attorney?
Hindi, kasi nga, sabi sa Article 3, ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith.
Seemingly, parang ang harsh naman ng batas. Is
Oo.
the law harsh?
Oo, harsh siya, pero, again, it is the law.
Mhm.
Oo, we have to follow. Kasi kung hindi tayo susunod, may mga sanctions.
So, yan yung sinasabi na doctrine na principle na jura lex sed lex.
Yes.
No?
The law may
The
be
law may be
harsh,
harsh,
but it is the law.
So guys, on that note, that concludes our first session for the module 1 in our law and obligations and contracts.
I hope, or we hope, madami kayong natutunan from our meeting today. And kung meron pa kayong questions or for any clarifications regarding Module 1, pwede kayong mag-comment on the post.
Yes, comment down below.
Comment down below.
Yes, and siguro yun lang. I know we're having somehow adjustments when it comes to this online platform dun sa flexible learning, no?
Yes.
Pero kami ni Attorney Uy, this is our way collaborating para matulungan kayo in whatever capacity para mas maintindihan niyo yung subject matter, no? So, yun guys, I hope na tangkilikin ninyo yung aming mga lectures kasi marami pa kami i-upload kasi nga 8 modules tayo, so we have 7 more modules to go.
Yes, 7 more modules
Yes.
to go.
And if you want us to answer questions again, pwede namin yung sagutin bago dun sa susunod namin i-upload.
Yes.
Okay? So, yun, to all the students na meron kami, please, yun, subscribe in our channel. Yes, in my channel actually, the name of the channel is Legally Engineer. So, again, this has been Attorney Benric Maralit.
And Attorney April Lamuy.
Your handsome and pretty. Your handsome.
Your moms.
Your mom and your handsome, yes. Instructors in law and obligations and contracts.
Log 201.
Yes. So see each other again. See you next module. Bye guys.